the book has 5 appendices that are really helpful. Appendix number 4 is an open letter that I think, Eric, you wrote to your church, kind of initiating conversation about this topic. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what are some steps we can take that pastors or church leaders watching this can take like that to try to help broach this topic and make it okay to talk about it.
I think that's a great question, and it's one we need to be asking. And I think one starting place, I have several thoughts on this, but one starting place would be figure out your doctrine and make it clear on what you believe about where women can serve and where they can't. And so some churches are going to say a woman can't hold the office of elder. Uh, she can't teach in the assembly, on Sunday morning. That might extend to Sunday school. But figure out what your collective conscience as a congregation believes about this. And where there's no restriction, throw the doors wide open.
Mhm.
I hear about churches even that the elders, one person was telling me the elders in their former church had discussed whether women could serve as deacons for 3 or 4 years. And the consensus among the elders was there's, scripturally that the office is open to women, but they would never actually open it to women because it might signal this or, it might imply that. That's just wrong. If you believe a woman can serve there, let women serve there. Uh, and that's helpful not just to the women but to the world because if if you believe in only ordaining males to the pastorate, the world comes at the church already thinking that we have something against women. And when it learns that we exclude them in places that there's not any justification for in the Bible, they're going to say, yep, that proves it. So the more biblical we can be, the better, even for our witness. And so I'd say include them everywhere you can. And so, like at our church, that means, we have women who lead our liturgy that are on our song team, responsive readings, do our scripture readings. I think, Paul sets an example of women praying in the assembly in Corinth, and he doesn't tell them to stop. So Paul expects the voices of women to be heard on Sunday morning when the church gathers. So we need to ask ourselves, if that's not the experience in our congregation, why? And we better have a good answer. If Paul expected it, I think we should be expecting it too. Um, I think one thing we can do is, when you ask the question, what are practical steps we can take to celebrate women? Most of the women I talk to don't want a party that says, "Yay, women, you're valuable." They want to be a part of the church. They want to be our sisters. And so I think treating them as equals and not inferiors is really important. The women I know love rich doctrine and Bible study. And in most of the churches I've been in, they've been more devoted to studying doctrine and the Bible than the men have. And but we often throw them fluff, and I think we need to treat them as sisters and not as threats. And so we need to be careful with being careful because sometimes the cautions we take send a wrong message about women. And while we think they're protecting us, they could actually be harming our sisters. And then treat them as interesting humans and not stereotypes. And so as pastors, we have to think like, if I use an illustration that is going to feature a female, or I'm going to make application to the women in the congregation, is it always about being a wife and a mother? Do I ever speak of a woman in a business role? In a scientific field, or is that always the men? When application exits the home, it's always masculine and not feminine. So just to acknowledge that, and even if a woman's a wife and a mother and she stays at home, to do that, she's more than that. She has interests and hobbies and worries. And so even in our conversation, not just asking questions about the home and homeschooling and, but drawing out their 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 life is a helpful thing.
One of the things I think we've heard a lot as well as we've talked to women, and I know I've experienced it myself, is something that you said, Eric, that you treat women like they're interesting and with respect. The number of times I've been, because I've had the opportunity to speak at a number of conferences where there are men and women, and sometimes I'm the only woman who's speaking, um, and and the number of times that it's almost like I'm not there.
Mm.
I'm invisible. It's like if we talk to you, um, maybe we're crossing some sort of a line,
Mm.
like guys aren't supposed, or that I'm going to feel like uncomfortable in some way. Um, Women are not invisible, and when a woman walks into a room, acknowledging her is a kind and loving, respectful thing to do,
Mm.
and not just saying to her like, "Oh, so how's your husband's work doing?" Something like that. Those kinds of things. Boy, it's nonstop. Um, so those kinds of things. And then the other thing, that Eric, that you said, when a woman walks into a congregation, if you want women to think that they're welcome, when a woman walks into a congregation on that platform in some way, she better see somebody that looks like her. So, however, in your church, you can do that by letting a woman sing, or better yet, read the scripture. Listen, if Paul was concerned not to tell the women in Corinth to be quiet, but concerned about what they were wearing. He said, when you speak publicly in the congregation, this is how you dress, so that you show your respect for authority, and you're not trying to signal something else. Paul didn't say to the women who were praying and prophesying, be quiet. He said, this is how you dress. And, I really wonder, we're so quick to say, well, Paul says women should be silent, women should not do this. But what about the times when Paul says women should be talking? What about the times when Paul says this is how women should dress when they're addressing the congregation? What about that? So if you want women to know that they're welcome in your congregation, then you signal that by somehow having a woman do something. We've talked to people who they wanted women to just start saying the announcements, and and portions of the church were flipping out because a woman was going to say, "We're having a potluck next Sunday." Because somehow they would think that, well, that means that a woman is telling a man what to do. We've got to do better at this. If what we want to do is say to women, you are valued, you are welcome, we want your gifts, we want your voice, we got to do better at this.